Picture this. It's a Tuesday night in America, and millions of people are scattered across living rooms, sports bars, and airport lounges, watching what they think is just another routine political interview. The studio glows with blue lights. Cameras are rolling, and President Trump leans forward with that signature confidence we all know. What comes out of his mouth next will ignite a firestorm that tears through every corner of this country like wildfire. But here's what nobody saw coming. The one man who never fights back, who stayed silent through years of attacks, is about to deliver the most devastating response in modern political history. And he's going to do it without raising his voice even once. What you're about to hear will change everything you think you know about leadership, truth, and the price of rewriting history. Because when Barack Obama finally decided to speak, his words didn't just fact-check a president. They reminded an entire nation what we've forgotten about the power of quiet strength. This is a story of two presidents, one explosive claim, and a moment America was forced to choose between volume and truth. Trust me, you've never heard anything quite like this before. Trump sitting across from a primetime host, the kind of interview that usually covers foreign policy and upcoming legislation. Safe territory, predictable questions. But then he does what he always does. He goes off script. No one's ever fixed this economy the way I have, he declares, jabbing his finger toward the camera. Everything you see right now, it's because of me. The words hang in the air like a challenge thrown down at the feet of history itself. The interviewer blinks, shuffles his papers, clearly caught off guard. For a split second, you can actually hear the silence. It's the kind of pause that makes your skin crawl, because you know something big just happened. And across America, people are having very different reactions. At a sports bar in Toledo, Ohio, a group of union workers sit shoulder to shoulder, beers in hand, eyes locked on the TV mounted above the counter. Rick Donnelly, this tall guy with weathered hands, mutters under his breath, "That's not how I remember it. We were crawling out of that hole before he even got in." His buddy leans forward, voice low and careful. "Easy, Rick. Say that too loud in here and you'll start a fight." Meanwhile, in Phoenix, Arizona, Martha Reynolds sits alone on her couch, knitting needles frozen midair. She lived through the 2008 crash, watched her pension take a hit, and remembers exactly who was president when the recovery plan started. Her voice cracks as she whispers to her empty living room. "That's not fair. That's just not true." But wait, it gets crazier. The interviewer tries to regain control. "Mr. President," he says carefully, "some economists say that many of these gains began years earlier during the Obama administration." Trump waves him off with a flick of his hand, smiling like the question isn't even worth finishing. "They always say that, but everyone knows nothing worked until I came in. I fixed it. Obama had his chance. He failed. I succeeded." That single exchange, barely 2 minutes of television, is about to set the entire country on fire. Twitter explodes immediately. I'm talking instant combustion. Hashtags appear faster than you can refresh your feed. Hashtag Thanks Obama starts trending, but this time it's not ironic. Hashtag Trump Economy Fact Check follows right behind it. The internet is basically having a collective meltdown. In Philadelphia, college sophomore Jordan Kim is watching on her laptop in her dorm room when she immediately FaceTimes her father, a Korean War veteran who voted for Obama twice. "Dad, did you hear what Trump just said?" Her voice is shaky with a mix of anger and disbelief. He sighs on the other end of the line. "Yeah, I heard, but don't expect Obama to answer back. He doesn't do that anymore. He stays out of it." And that's exactly what made what happened next so absolutely shocking. Because here's the thing about Barack Obama that everyone had gotten used to. The man doesn't fight. After leaving office, he'd stayed above the daily chaos, occasionally offering speeches about unity or hope, but never aiming his words directly at Trump. People had grown accustomed to that silence. Some even admired it. But this was different. This wasn't about policy disagreements or Twitter feuds. This was about legacy, about truth, about who would get credit in the history books for pulling America out of one of the darkest economic chapters in modern times. Reporters swarm cable news after the broadcast ends. On CNN, an anchor looks straight into the camera with that serious news voice we all recognize. The president just credited himself for policies economists widely agree began years before his administration. Will President Obama respond? Panelists debate late into the night, voices rising, statistics flying across the screen like ammunition in a war room. But here's what nobody expects. The man in question is actually going to step forward. At a diner in Des Moines, Iowa, the next morning, a waitress named Tanya refills mugs of steaming coffee while customers argue at the counter. A truck driver slaps his newspaper down and declares, "Trump's right. My business didn't bounce back until after he got in." The older man beside him shakes his head, adjusting his glasses. "You must have forgotten 2009. Without those bailouts, you'd still be hauling empty trailers." The tension is everywhere. Suburbs, small towns, coastal cities. Families are debating at breakfast tables. Neighbors are whispering about it over backyard fences. Talk radio stations play Trump's words on repeat, adding fuel to an already raging fire. But while most people assume Obama will stay silent, quietly watching from the sidelines as he usually does behind the scenes, something else is brewing. His advisors begin making calls late that night. They're clipping footage, pulling old reports, double-checking numbers that most Americans had long forgotten. One of his longtime aides, Marcus Rivera, reportedly asks, "Are you sure you want to say something, sir? You know what kind of storm this will cause." Obama, calm as always, leans back in his chair and says softly, "If history is being rewritten, then someone has to set the record straight." Can you even imagine? That was the moment the country didn't know it was waiting for. By the time the sun comes up the next morning, Trump's remark has already taken on a life of its own. Local radio hosts are replaying the clip like a catchy song stuck on repeat. On WNIR out of Akron, callers line up one after another to weigh in. Some are laughing at Trump's bravado, others are furious, and a few sound genuinely confused, unsure what to believe anymore. On Twitter, the reaction has gone into complete overdrive. A trending post shows side-by-side charts of job growth starting in 2010 with the caption, "Receipts don't lie." Another account, one with a bald eagle as its profile picture, shoots back with fake numbers, fake charts. Trump saved us. Period. The back and forth is endless, raw, and bitter. In a coffee shop in Madison, Wisconsin, a group of graduate students huddle around a laptop. One of them, a political science major named Leah Ford, slams her cup down a little too hard. He just erased 8 years of progress in one sentence. People believe him because he says it loud enough. Her friend Anthony leans back in his chair, smirking. You act like politicians haven't been doing that forever. The only difference is this guy's better at it than anyone else. Their conversation grows sharper, each word edged with the weight of their futures, their loans, their sense of truth itself. Meanwhile, conservative radio stations are painting a very different picture. In Dallas, callers cheer Trump's confidence. One woman declares, "Finally, someone who takes credit instead of apologizing all the time. Obama never fixed anything. We were in misery until Trump came along." The host claps his hands together, reveling in the energy of his audience. Television screens in diners and gyms replay the interview in an endless loop. CNN panels dissect his claims with graphs and timelines. Fox News runs clips of Trump smiling, followed by sound bites of small business owners crediting him for their recovery. Both sides lean into their narratives, widening the divide with each broadcast. But something feels different this time. Normally, Trump's comments would fade after a day or two, replaced by the next headline-grabbing controversy. Yet this remark has a sting to it. It wasn't about a scandal or a tweet. It was about memory, about history, about who got credit for pulling America out of one of the darkest economic chapters in modern times. In Dayton, Ohio, at a local community center, a group of retirees gathers for their weekly card game. They don't talk politics often, but that morning, the subject is unavoidable. "I lost half my savings back in '08, says Harold Jennings, tapping his cards against the table. "I don't care who you voted for. Obama's policies kept me afloat. Trump can say what he wants, but I lived it." Across from him, his friend Clara frowns. "I don't know, Harold. My son says his business only started booming once Trump got elected. Maybe both are right. That's the mood gripping America right now. A deep split, not just in politics, but in personal memory. People aren't just arguing about numbers. They're arguing about their own lives, about the stories they tell themselves to make sense of the last decade. Reporters in Washington pick up on this quickly. In the White House press room, questions fly at Trump's press secretary. Does the president stand by his claim? What specific policies is he referring to? The spokesperson dodges, pivots, and eventually snaps. The results speak for themselves. But here's the thing. The more the administration doubles down, the more commentators and historians bring up old clips of Obama announcing stimulus measures, signing financial reforms, pushing for job programs. Cable news runs those old sound bites side by side with Trump's words, creating a jarring contrast that's impossible to ignore. In Los Angeles, an Uber driver named Calvin turned his radio up as NPR plays an archival recording of Obama saying, "This won't be easy, but America will recover." Calvin mutters to himself, "I remember that. I remember how scared everyone was back then." He glances in the rearview mirror at his passenger, a young man glued to his phone. "Kid, you weren't even old enough to work yet. Don't let anyone rewrite what we lived through." The anger grows throughout the day. Hashtags multiply. Hashtag Obama Build It trends alongside hashtag Trump Saved Us. It's not just political junkies arguing now. It's grandparents, teenagers, mechanics, nurses. The debate has jumped from TV studios into living rooms, text threads, and classrooms. Yet for all the noise, one question keeps popping up on every platform. Will Obama respond? He rarely does. After leaving office, he stayed above the daily fight, occasionally offering speeches about unity or hope, never aiming his words directly at Trump. People have gotten used to that silence, even admired it. But this feels different. This is about legacy, about truth, about who will get credit in the history books. At a barbershop in Detroit, a man getting his haircut laughs bitterly as the TV replays Trump's remarks. If Obama doesn't say something now, they'll run away with this lie. His barber, shaking his head, replies, he won't. That's not his style. He doesn't go low like that. The man stares at his reflection in the mirror, jaw tight. Maybe it's time he does. But while everyday Americans argue, speculate, and demand answers, only a handful of people know that Obama's team is already drafting something behind closed doors. When the first alerts flash across phones that afternoon, many people assume it's fake news. Barack Obama, the man who stayed out of daily fights and chose his words with surgical care, has issued a statement less than 24 hours after Trump's live TV remarks. The timing is shocking enough, but the tone, that calm, deliberate cadence that people still remember, is what stops Americans mid-step in grocery aisles and bus stops. It begins simply, facts matter. Wait, it gets crazier. In a quiet office in Washington, D.C., a handful of former aides had gathered late the night before. They knew the risks of stepping into the storm, but as one of them, Marcus Rivera, put, "If we let this slide, the truth is gone tomorrow." Papers are spread across the table. Charts, quotes from bipartisan reports, articles that had long been buried under the noise of current politics. Obama sits with them, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, listening more than speaking. When he finally does speak, his words are measured. We don't need anger. We don't need to match the volume. We just need clarity. People remember what they lived through. Let's give them the facts they already know in their bones. The team nods, scribbling notes, drafting language, arguing over what details to include. One advisor worries that the response will be painted as political. Obama leans back, hands folded. It's not about politics. It's about truth. And if truth makes someone uncomfortable, so be it. By noon the next day, the statement is finalized and released. It's short, just under 1,000 words, but every line carries weight. Obama acknowledges the progress of the current economy, but carefully outlines the policies set in motion years earlier. He references the 2008 crash directly, reminding Americans of those desperate nights when banks were collapsing and unemployment soared. He doesn't point fingers. Instead, he lays out the steps his administration had taken. financial reforms, auto industry bailouts, healthcare protections that created the framework for the growth Trump is now celebrating. He ends with a line that pierces through all the noise. Leadership is not about claiming credit for what you inherited. It's about leaving something stronger for the next generation. Cable networks interrupt programming to broadcast a statement live. Anchors lean forward as they read lines aloud. Their voices tinge with surprise at how direct it is without ever sounding aggressive. On CNN, one commentator says, "This is as close a fact check as you'll get from Barack Obama," and it landed like a hammer. In Milwaukee, a middle school teacher named Claire Novak is grading papers when her phone buzzes with the headline. She opens a link, reads the word slowly, and smiles faintly. "That's the man I voted for," she whispers. Later, in her classroom, she prints out a section and tapes it to the wall. Facts matter. Meanwhile, in Tampa, a construction worker named Greg Townsend reads the statement during lunch break. He turns to his crew, shaking his head. Say what you want about him, but the guy makes sense. He's not yelling. He's not tweeting. He's just laying it out. His co-worker, chewing on a sandwich, mutters, "Yeah, but you know Trump's going to hit back twice as hard." Reporters scramble for reactions. Within minutes, Twitter floods with screenshots of Obama's words. Supporters cheer, saying he dropped a bombshell without raising his voice. Critics fire back, calling it grandstanding. Hashtags clash again, but this time the tone is different. This isn't just partisan noise. This is a heavyweight stepping back into the ring. At the White House, aides rush between offices holding printouts of the statement. One staffer admits to a reporter later, "It caught us off guard. We didn't expect him to actually respond. Not like that." Trump, watching cable news in a residence, is visibly irritated as clips of Obama's words run side by side with his own. "Fake news," he mutters, waving at the screen. He's jealous. That's all it is. But the unease inside his team grows. Some advisors push for a quick, sharp counterattack. Others urge restraint, warning that Obama's calm tone makes Trump's bluster look even louder in comparison. Arguments break out in the West Wing as they draft possible talking points. Meanwhile, in living rooms across the country, Americans feel something they haven't in a long time. A former president stepping forward, not for himself, but for the record. The contrast between Trump's bravado and Obama's composure is stark. Even those who disagree with Obama admit that his delivery carries a weight that's hard to dismiss. In Cleveland, a grandmother named Deborah Jameson sits with her granddaughter watching the coverage. "See," she tells a girl, "that's how you speak when you want people to listen. You don't shout. You don't brag. You just tell the truth." Her granddaughter, eyes wide, asks, "But why did he wait until now?" Deborah smiles sadly, because sometimes the right moment is louder than 100 speeches. The first place Obama's statement really catches fire isn't on cable news, but on Facebook. Middle-aged parents, retirees, and even high school teachers are sharing screenshots with captions like, "This is what leadership sounds like." The word spread fast, copied and reposted in threads about everything from neighborhood updates to church groups. By mid-afternoon, TikTok is full of short clips of Obama's calm delivery, edited side by side with Trump's bold claim from the night before. The contrast is brutal. Trump's confident, almost boastful tone plays right before Obama's measured, steady words. One teenager in Tucson, Arizona, splices the two clips with a caption that reads, "Loud versus smart." The video racks up 500,000 views in just a few hours. Newsrooms across the country work overtime. At the Boston Globe, reporters hold an emergency meeting, editors pointing at screens as they decide how to frame the headline. "We can't bury the lead," one of them says. This isn't just Obama fact-checking Trump. This is a former president stepping out of retirement to reclaim history. In Miami, CNN field reporter Ana Delgado interviews people outside a grocery store. A young mother pushing a stroller says, "It feels like he's defending us, not himself. Like he's standing up for the truth we already lived through." Nearby, an older man in a baseball cap shakes his head. It's politics, plain and simple. He's just trying to steal the spotlight. That tension, Admiration on one side, suspicion on the other, only amplifies the story. At a newsroom in Los Angeles, MSNBC replays clips with panelists debating fiercely. One analyst remarks, Obama didn't just correct Trump. He reminded the country of what leadership sounds like when it's grounded in reality. Another fires back, that's rich, considering Trump's the one in office actually making things happen right now. The split is clear. Each network finds ways to frame the narrative for its base. But in ordinary places, schools, job sites, diners, the statement becomes something else entirely. In Omaha, Nebraska, a group of high school seniors sits in their civics class, their teacher projecting both Trump's remarks and Obama's response on the whiteboard. The room buzzes with debate. A boy in the back row crosses his arms. Trump's not wrong. We were stuck until he came in. A girl at the front fires back. My dad got his job back in 2012. That wasn't Trump. Don't rewrite it. The teacher lets him argue, quietly smiling. It isn't about convincing anyone. It's about showing how words from leaders can shape memory itself. Meanwhile, in New Orleans, a jazz club owner named Philip sits at his bar watching the coverage on a muted TV while polishing glasses. His friend Marie, a retired nurse, leans in. You believe him? Philip nods slowly. I was here when the crash hit. My business nearly went under. Those recovery programs, they gave me breathing room. Obama's right to speak up. Marie sighs. I just hope people are listening. The story dominates evening broadcasts. NBC's Lester Holt opens the nightly news with a rare move from former President Barack Obama, breaking his silence to directly counter President Trump's claims about the economy. The segment shows side-by-side graphs, old footage from 2009 and man-on-the-street interviews. It's everywhere. No channel, no phone screen, untouched. Even conservative circles can't ignore it. On Fox, commentators work to reframe it as Obama trying to cling to relevance. But they still run the quotes because the audience demands to hear them. And once they do, the effect is unavoidable. In Springfield, Missouri, a hardware store owner named Bob watches from behind his counter. He'd voted Republican his whole life, but something about the word sticks with him. Later that evening, when a customer brings it up, Bob admits quietly, I don't like the man, but he wasn't lying. Those bailouts kept half this town alive. What shocks observers most isn't that Obama's words spread. It's how quickly they become part of everyday language. College students quote, facts matter, in group chats. Union leaders repeat, leadership isn't about claiming credit at meetings. Even pastors weave lines into Sunday sermons, reminding congregations that truth matters more than spin. But in Trump's world, the pressure is mounting. When Trump finally answers, it isn't through a carefully polished statement. It's live, unscripted, and raw, exactly the way he likes it. Early Tuesday morning. Cameras are set up in the Rose Garden for what the White House bills as a press availability on infrastructure. But as soon as a reporter shouts, Mr. President, do you have a response to Barack Obama's remarks? The event turns into something else entirely. Trump grips the podium, squinting in the sunlight. His tone is sharp from the first word. Look, Barack Obama had 8 years. 8 years. And what did he leave us with? The slowest recovery in history. People forget that. People were suffering. Families were suffering. Fact. He jabs a finger at the reporters. And now he wants to lecture me about success? Please. I built the greatest economy in the world, and everyone knows it. The reporters shout questions over one another. One asks, Mr. President, what about his claim that many of the protections and programs from 2008 are still driving today's growth? Trump waves it off. That's nonsense. That was Band-Aid stuff. Temporary. If I hadn't come in and slashed regulations, if I hadn't cut taxes, if I hadn't brought back jobs, none of this would have worked. None of it. His voice rises, the words rapid fire, his hand chop in the air. Behind him, aides shift uncomfortably. Some scribble notes. Others avoid eye contact altogether. They know the clip will dominate news cycles for days. In Philadelphia, a group of law students watches a broadcast on their phones between classes. One mutters, he's doubling down. No surprise. Another shakes her head. But notice, he's not actually naming facts. He's just repeating the line louder. Their professor, overhearing, says softly, and that's why Obama spoke, because repetition without evidence eventually becomes memory. Meanwhile, in Florida at a retirement community, the reaction is very different. Residents gather in a lounge as Trump's words echo through the room. A man in a red cap cheers. That's my president. Finally putting that guy in his place. An elderly woman across the room mutters under her breath. He's put himself in a hole, and you can't even see it. Within hours, clips of the Rose Garden rant flood social media. Supporters praise his passion. Critics mock his defensiveness. Memes appear comparing Obama's steady statement to Trump's animated gestures. On late-night shows, comedians parody Trump's delivery, waving arms and shouting exaggerated phrases. Greatest economy. Folks, Obama bad, Trump great. The audience howls. But while the comedy is easy, the deeper reaction is tension. On Wall Street, investors watch nervously as the back and forth injects uncertainty. One analyst on CNBC says, "Markets like stability, and right now we're getting the opposite." His co-host adds, "This isn't about policy anymore. It's about two legacies colliding." Inside the West Wing, the fallout is immediate. Some staffers applaud the president's punchback style. Others whisper that he made Obama look even more dignified by comparison. One aide confides anonymously to Politico, "The former president had facts. The current president had volume. And sometimes volume backfires." At a high school in San Antonio, a history teacher pauses class to show both clips, the calm Obama statement and Trump's fiery Rose Garden response. Afterward, she asks her students, "What do you notice?" A boy in the back shrugs. One sounds like a teacher. The other sounds like a coach yelling at halftime. The room chuckles, but the lesson sticks. Meanwhile, everyday Americans feel the anxiety deepen. In Denver, a waitress carrying plates overhears a group of customers arguing over the exchange. One slams his fist on the table. "Obama's a liar." Another shoots back. "Trump's rewriting history, and you know it." The waitress sighs later in the kitchen. "I serve food, not politics, but it feels like the whole country's at each other's throats." By evening, Trump himself is back online, tweeting in bursts. "Obama failed the economy. Everyone knows it. Don't let fake news tell you otherwise." Then another, "Best economy ever," tells you Trump economy. His feed runs hot, his tone more agitated by the hour. Fox News anchors rally behind him, highlighting his claim that deregulation spurred growth. MSNBC hammers him with fact checks. CNN runs a cheer-in that reads, "Trump blames Obama again without evidence." Each network's framing only sharpens the divide. For Obama, silence returns after the statement. No follow-up, no interview, no extra lines. The absence makes his original words feel even louder. Aides close to him tell reporters, "He said what needed to be said, nothing more." That restraint contrasts sharply with Trump's ongoing outbursts, and many Americans notice. In Indianapolis, a truck driver named Paul sits at a diner counter watching both men's clips back to back. He shakes his head. One looks like a professor giving a lecture. The other looks like he's yelling at his neighbor. "Depends what you like, I guess." The man next to him replies, or "Depends what you can't stand." By midweek, the clash between Trump and Obama has seeped so deeply into American life that even people who usually avoid politics can't escape it. The talk isn't just on TV or in newspapers anymore. It's in checkout lines, school parking lots, and waiting rooms. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone wants to be heard. In Minneapolis, at a crowded bus stop, two strangers strike up a conversation after spotting Trump's Rose Garden clip on one of their phones. A middle-aged man in work boots shakes his head. "I don't care who you are. Yelling doesn't make you right." The woman beside him counters quickly. At least he's fighting for himself. Obama had 8 years, and all he did was talk. The bus arrives, but neither steps on immediately. They're too caught up in their argument, voices carrying into the street. Meanwhile, in smaller towns like Billings, Montana, people crowd into diners where televisions hang above the counters. A waitress named Janice refills coffee cups as a debate plays across Fox and CNN on separate screens. One group of farmers point to the Fox screen, muttering about Trump, telling it like it is. A pair of retirees 2 stools downstairs at CNN's replay of Obama's statement, whispering to each other that truth has a quieter sound. Janice later tells a friend, "I've served food during elections before, but I've never seen people so split they can't even sit in the same booth anymore." The division shows up at dinner tables, too. In St. Louis, the Johnson family sits down for spaghetti and garlic bread, but the TV in the background keeps replaying highlights. The father stabs at his plate with his fork. Trump's right. Obama's just jealous. His wife, eyes locked on the screen, replies, "Jealous of what? He already had the job. He's just correcting the record." Their teenage daughter slams her fork down. "Can we eat one meal without this?" The silence that follows is heavy. The only sound is the faint hum of the television filling the room. Even workplaces aren't immune. At a construction site in Phoenix, workers eat lunch on steel beams as a radio plays clips from Obama's and Trump's statements. One worker shouts across, "Trump built this economy, period." Another yells back, "Wrong. Obama gave him the tools, and he just grabbed the credit." The laughter and jeers that follow sound more like a sports rivalry than a political debate, but the stakes feel heavier than any game. On the other side of the spectrum, some people express deep exhaustion. In Portland, a nurse named Joanne scrolls past both clips on her phone and says, "I'm tired of men arguing about who's right. I just want health care that works." Her coworker leans over. "That's the thing, though. Those arguments decide if we ever get it." In churches, sermons turn subtly political. Pastors quote Obama's line, "Leadership is not about claiming credit for what you inherited," as a reminder of humility. In other congregations, ministers praise Trump's fight against those who would diminish his success. Faith itself becomes another mirror, reflecting the divide. But here's what's really incredible. This isn't just about politics anymore. It's about something deeper. Monday morning brings a flood of experts. Economists, professors, and policy experts flood the airwaves, their voices layering over one another as networks scramble to fill airtime. The country wants answers, and every channel is ready to supply them. On CNN, a special roundtable assembles with 6 experts. They project graphs across the studio wall, showing lines of job growth beginning in 2010. One professor, a gray-haired economist from Ohio State, taps the screen with a laser pointer. This isn't partisan. These numbers are government records. The recovery started long before Trump. Across from him, a younger analyst shakes his head. That may be true, but growth accelerated under Trump. You can't deny that either. The back and forth plays out in living rooms across America. People lean forward in recliners, arguing with the TV. In Birmingham, Alabama, a couple sits on opposite ends of their couch. The husband shouts at the screen, "See? They just admitted it. Trump made it better." His wife, arms folded, counters, "Made it better? Sure, but he didn't start it. There's a difference." Their teenage son, earbuds dangling around his neck, rolls his eyes. "You guys fight about this more than anything else." The Wall Street Journal publishes a lengthy editorial dissecting the numbers. It praises parts of Trump's approach, but emphasizes that the foundation was laid by Obama. The op-ed concludes, "History is not a batting race where one man claims all the credit. It is a relay where each leader hands something to the next, whether strong or fragile." That line gets quoted repeatedly on Twitter, sparking another wave of debate. Even late-night comedy shows double down on the topic. On Stephen Colbert's desk sits a stack of oversized charts. He waves them theatrically. "See this? It's called math. Apparently, it's a socialist plot now." The audience erupts with laughter, but beneath the humor is a sense of frustration. For those in the middle, people who aren't die-hard loyalists to either man, the flood of analysis is exhausting. In Portland, Oregon, a young mother named Sheila sits at her kitchen table after putting her kids to bed. She stares at her laptop as experts argue in a live stream. Finally, she closes a tab and whispers, "I just want the truth, not a shouting match." But the shouting is unavoidable. The more the experts weigh in, the more each side clings to their version of events. The emotional divide from earlier in the week is now being fortified by charts, statistics, and op-eds. Each camp arms itself with facts, but only the facts that fit their story. By the end of the week, the shouting has evolved into something heavier. People aren't just arguing about who's right anymore. They're wrestling with what the fight means. It isn't just Trump versus Obama. It's memory versus narrative, truth versus repetition, history versus politics. And ordinary Americans caught in the crossfire are left asking themselves, who decides what's remembered? In Columbus, Ohio, a high school history teacher named Richard Mayfield pulls his students aside before the bell rings. He dims the lights, projects both Trump's remarks and Obama's statement on the whiteboard, and lets the class sit in silence for a full minute. Then he asks, 50 years from now, when your grandkids open a textbook, what version of the story do you think they'll see? The room buzzes with whispers before a girl finally speaks. Whichever side wins the argument, not necessarily the truth. The teacher nods slowly, his eyes heavy. That's the crux of it. Numbers matter, yes. Policies matter, yes. But more than anything, the fight reveals how fragile collective memory can be. Americans aren't just divided over opinions. They're divided over what they believe actually happened. News anchors pick up on this angle. NBC runs a segment titled The Battle Over History. Analysts explain how generations experience crises differently, how the 2008 crash felt like one thing to retirees, and something entirely different to teenagers who only knew it from headlines. A sociologist explains, people don't just remember events. They remember how they felt in those moments. That's why one family can see the same period as salvation, while another sees it as stagnation. In Dallas, at a kitchen table cluttered with bills, a father named Miguel flips through old paperwork. Mortgage adjustments, loan forgiveness letters, the bailout that saved his family's home in 2009. He hands the folder to his teenage son. This is why I say Obama's right. Because we lived it. You don't forget the fear of losing everything. His son, phone in hand, replies, yeah, but my friend's parents say they only started making money when Trump came in. They live that, too. Miguel sighs, closing the folder. That's the problem. Everyone's got their own truth. The lesson isn't just political. It's moral. In Springfield, Illinois, a pastor uses Obama's words in his Sunday sermon. Leadership is not about claiming credit for what you inherited. It is about leaving something stronger. He pauses, looking out at his congregation. That's not just politics. That's life. Parents, teachers, mentors, we all leave something behind. The question is whether it's better than what we found. Congregants nod, some teary-eyed, others quiet in reflection. In contrast, a radio host in Phoenix tells his listeners that Trump's refusal to give Obama credit shows strength. Life isn't about handing trophies to the guy before you. It's about standing your ground, taking the win, and moving forward. Callers cheer, saying that's exactly what they respect about the president. He fights for his own narrative. The divide reveals a deeper anxiety. If truth itself can be argued out of existence, what else can be reshaped? In Los Angeles, a filmmaker tells a friend over dinner, we're watching history get edited in real time. And the scary part is, whoever shouts loudest might win. Her friend stabs at her salad and replies, or whoever stays calm long enough to outlast the shouting. Even children pick up on the tension. In a middle school in Tulsa, a boy raises his hand after a civics lesson. If two presidents can't agree on what happened, how are we supposed to know what's real? The teacher doesn't have an easy answer. She just says, that's why you have to ask questions. Always ask questions. What becomes clear is that both men represent more than themselves. Obama has positioned himself as a guardian of truth, someone willing to speak up not for credit, but for history's sake. Trump has cast himself as a fighter, unwilling to concede an inch. Defining strength is never admitting the other side is right. Americans aren't just choosing between two presidents. They're choosing between two models of leadership. And for many, the lesson cuts deep. In Kansas, a small business owner reflects to a local reporter, I don't care about red or blue. What I care about is honesty. My kids are watching. They're learning what leadership looks like from these men. And I want them to see that telling the truth, even when it's inconvenient, matters more than who gets the applause. The debate isn't ending. It's evolving. No matter which side people land on, one fact becomes impossible to ignore. The story isn't really about numbers or job charts anymore. It's about integrity, memory, and the legacy each leader will leave behind. By the time the week comes to a close, the nation is exhausted. The back and forth between Trump and Obama isn't just a headline anymore. It has become part of people's daily lives. In grocery aisles, neighbors still whisper about it. In classrooms, teachers turn it into lessons. In family kitchens, dinner conversations still end in silence after the subject comes up. It feels less like a political fight and more like a mirror America is being forced to look into. And what that mirror shows isn't flattering. It reveals a country struggling with memory, truth, and pride. For every person who swears that Obama's calm words defended history, another shouts that Trump's fire shows strength. Both sides cling to their version of events like lifeboats in a storm, afraid to admit the other might have a point. But there's also something strangely unifying in the divide itself. Everyone understands, deep down, that words of power. When Obama spoke, it was measured, thoughtful, designed to stand the test of time. When Trump countered, it was passionate, brash, designed to dominate the moment. Both approaches shaped how Americans felt, argued, and remembered. And both revealed something about leadership, its strengths, its flaws, its consequences. In Charleston, South Carolina, a mother tucks her kids into bed after another long day of watching the news. Her daughter asks, "Mom, why are they fighting?" She pauses, searching for the simplest answer. Because sometimes people care more about who gets the credit than the truth. The child frowns. But shouldn't the truth win? The mother kisses her forehead. Yes, baby, it should. That conversation plays out in countless homes, in different words, but with the same longing for honesty, for fairness, for something steady in the chaos. In Denver, a retired factory worker tells a reporter, "I don't care if it's Obama or Trump. What scares me is the idea that facts can be argued away. If we lose that, we lose everything." His words echo a sentiment felt by many. This isn't just about politics. It's about what kind of nation America wants to be. And that's where the moral rises out of the noise. Leadership isn't just about power or applause. It's about responsibility. It's about telling the truth, even when it doesn't make you look like the hero. It's about leaving behind a foundation, not tearing it apart for the sake of credit. Obama's decision to speak reminded people of that. Trump's response reminded people of the danger of forgetting it. Together, their clash became a cautionary tale. At a church in Louisville, a pastor sums it up to his congregation. We all want to be remembered for something. But the question is, will we be remembered for the truth we stood by or the stories we tried to claim as our own? Heads nod, some eyes well with tears as the message lands in a place beyond politics. The truth is, history isn't written only by the powerful. It's shaped by what people choose to remember, repeat, and pass on. That's why Obama's calm line, "Facts matter," spread so quickly. Because beneath the anger, beneath the noise, Americans long for something solid they can hold on to. And maybe that's the biggest lesson of all. That in a world where volume often drowns out reason, truth still has a way of lasting. It may not trend as fast. It may not shout as loud. But it endures. It lingers in the back of people's minds. It's repeated in classrooms, taped on walls, whispered to children before they fall asleep. So whether you sided with Trump or Obama in this fight, the takeaway is bigger than both men. The takeaway is that leadership is judged not by who yells the loudest, but by who leave behind something honest, something useful, something future generations can trust. And that's the challenge for all of us, not just presidents. In our families, in our workplaces, in our communities, we each decide whether to chase the credit or protect the truth. Here's what I want you to remember from this story. When Barack Obama finally broke his silence, he didn't do it with anger or volume. He did it with something far more powerful, quiet certainty. He reminded an entire nation that facts don't need to be shouted to be true. They just need to be said. Trump's response showed us something equally important. that leadership without truth is just noise. No matter how loud you are, no matter how confident you sound, if you're not grounded in reality, you're building on sand. The real winner in this battle wasn't Trump or Obama. It was the idea that truth matters more than credit, that integrity matters more than applause, and that real leaders don't just claim victories. They create foundations for others to build on. In a world where everyone's fighting to rewrite history, the most radical act might just be telling it like it actually happened. Calmly, clearly, without ego or agenda. Because at the end of the day, that's what people remember. Not the loudest voice in the room, but the truest one. The truth may not always be the loudest voice in the room, but it's always the one worth remembering. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the kind of legacy we all leave behind, don't let the conversation end here. Share your thoughts. Keep this dialogue alive, because truth doesn't survive on its own. It survives when people like you decide it matters enough to defend. And remember, in your own life, in your own conversations, in your own moments of choice, you get to decide whether you'll be the person who chases credit or the person who protects truth. The world is